What happens when America's most beloved celebrity decides to cross the line? Then we travel to Indonesia to take a look at a mind-bending story that'll have you thinking, what in the world is going on with animals? You're standing there in the jungle, you're like, what? What's this parrot doing here? Why is he flying around? Walk like a normal person. And then we travel to a rehab center to get a little rest and relaxation after doing lots and lots of dope. But while you're kicking back, just trying to enjoy the sober lifestyle, you realize that one of your roommates has lost his mind. And you might be losing your mind as well. Today on Dead Rabbit Radio.
Actually, I'm a lot freaked out.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm not going to say I'm having a great day. I'm having a day, but I hope you guys are having a great day. Hope you guys had an awesome weekend. I got some bad news. When you're putting out a show for this long, going on 6 years, this was bound to happen, but it's just still kind of weird. And I'm not going to beat around the bush. Longtime listeners of the show may know Cantillions. Cantillions has been in the Discord. He's shown up to live episodes that we do live for the Patreon supporters online. And he's been flying the Carpenter Copter. He's done, a bunch of stuff with the show. I just found out last Thursday that he passed away about a year ago. I found out because I was going through a list of Patreon supporters, and I saw his name, and I go, Cantillions, dude, I haven't heard from him in a while. I haven't heard from him in a long time, so went to see if he was on the Discord, and he hadn't posted anything, and I checked my email to see if he emailed me recently, and he hadn't posted anything, so I started looking around, and I found out that he had died. I don't have all the details. I don't even know his real name, but in the world of the weird, we don't let that type of stuff get in the way of saluting a fallen member of the Fluffle. Cantillions, actually, a long time ago, he sent me a Father's Day card. I don't know if he was telling me that he was my lost son. He did scratch out the word fathers and wrote Bigfoot, so happy Bigfoot Day. Yo, Jason, thank you so much for the nightly spooks, scares, creeps, and some awesome stories. Keep it up, dude. I'll try to catch you on the next live stream. Keep killing it. Your pal / captain from... And then his address, I'm not going to dox the guy. But he sent me a bunch of Bigfoot stuff. He sent me a Bigfoot collar. Let me see if I can find that real quick. Well, maybe I should have played. Maybe I should have had this. Oh, here it is. Oh, no. He sent me a Bigfoot air freshener. And he sent me that card. And he sent me... Hang on, man. Oh, here it is. I had all this stuff on my fridge. I had his card up on my fridge. I had that card up on my fridge, and I had this stuff, Bigfoot air freshener. Bigfoot call. You're like, I can barely hear it, Jason. What are you doing? There's 100 buttons I get to press. We'll go through all of them. No, it really threw me for a loop on Thursday. I was editing the episode, and I found that out, and I was like, well, I gotta finish this episode. I gotta finish it right. But, yeah, and I was almost going to insert something in that episode. I said no. Cantillions has been a long-time member of the Fluffle. He's been supporting the show. He's been showing up to the live episodes. I've talked to the guy. So we're going to give him, he's going to be our captain or pilot this episode. Cantillions is going to be flying around our vehicles, and we're going to have a good, fun episode to send off. This, as far as I know, this is the first guy who's passed away who listened to this show. But, you figure, 5-6 years, people who've tuned in and out. It's still bummy, right? It's still pretty bummy, but everyone get on your feet and give it up for Cantillions. Woohoo! Yeah, wee! Haha! Yeah, he's all walking on into Dead Rabbit Radio Command, making himself at home in Dead Rabbit Radio Command. Cantillions, you're going to be our captain or pilot of this episode. If you guys can't support the show, I'm not even going to do the rest of the spiel. It doesn't even make sense. Cantillions, let's go ahead and get this party started. I'm going to go ahead and toss you the keys to the Jason Jalopy. We're going to leave behind Dead Rabbit Radio Command. Why don't you drive us all the way down to Guantanamo Bay? We're headed down to Guantanamo Bay. It's February 19th, 2024. This is a very recent story. Breaking news, really. Can't believe I waited so long to tell you guys about this. We get to Guantanamo Bay and we're putting on prison guard uniforms and we are showing up for work. We're like, hey dude, we forgot our prison keys. Can you let us in? Come on, man, be cool. And the guards are like, yeah, sure. So they open the door for us and we're walking through Guantanamo Bay pretending that we're prison guards. And it's just all these empty cells. All of these empty cells we're walking by. And you're like, dude, what are we doing here? Isn't this a super secure military installation? And we're wearing these super ill-fitting uniforms. Mine's all super tight. All the buttons are popping off. I go, shh, we gotta be really quiet because we've been at Guantanamo Bay several times over the course of this show. Breaking the news, the real raw news that the lamestream media won't cover. We covered it when Hillary Clinton was thrown in Guantanamo Bay where she pooped her pants all day long, adrenochrome withdrawal, and she was scurrying around on the floor. It's a great episode. I'll put it in the show notes. You guys remember that? That did get covered by USA Today when she was dragged out of her cell and killed in front of President Trump. I think I said enough keywords right there to get this episode taken off YouTube. But we're not here. Hillary Clinton's gone. I think, who was the other guy? I think a couple Fauci clones have been killed here. We've been to Guantanamo Bay quite a few times, but this one, we're walking through the hallways and we hear more. And the guards, we see far off, the guards are scared. They're looking into the cell. And we just hear someone devouring what sounds like a whole turkey. A whole live turkey. You see feathers flying out. More! Give me more! Just eating. And we can hear the sounds of masticating gums smacking against each other. Teeth that will never know the end of hunger. Ripping in to meat off the bone. And then eating the bone like Heathcliff. We're getting closer and we see the guards going I'm going to throw up. I can't. I need a new job. And we see those guards run off. We get to the cell and we see it's just food remains just scattered across the floor. But this person is still eating more. And I go, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you. Okay, here's the thing. I didn't make this up. Okay? Don't blame me. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to Guantanamo Bay's newest prisoner, Oprah Winfrey. She's like, more! The whole base, the whole concrete and steel base is shaking. Listen, I don't know. I know that there used to be jokes about Oprah being fat when I was a kid. I wouldn't classify her as fat nowadays. And to be fair, I probably wouldn't have called her fat back then. I was definitely heavier than she was, no matter how big she was. But Real Raw News, this website that is just traffics these insane stories about the white hats versus the deep state and this Joe Biden impersonator who used to be a famous Hollywood actor, but something landed on his head and shrunk him to the height of Joe Biden. I don't know why. Just pick an actor who's the same height as Joe Biden. Don't pick an actor who's 5 inches too tall. I'll put all those episodes in the show notes. There's this website called Real Raw News. They cover all of this crazy stuff. And it makes thousands upon thousands of dollars a month because people are constantly going to this website. His newest thing, or not his newest thing that I found interesting was this. Oprah Winfrey was sent to Guantanamo Bay. Her main crime was that she knew that the Maui fires were coming. And you go, what? What's that? I listen, I totally forgot about it too. Maybe you remember. You're all sitting in the rubble of your house in Maui. You're like, no, Jason, I clearly remember. I'm homeless now. Remember those huge fires that swept through the island of Maui, and all those houses were burned up except for, like, Oprah Winfrey's house. These were these reports that they had their houses painted. Either the roof was blue so the space laser didn't target their house, or they knew the fires were coming so they coated it in this fireproof paint. They wanted the rest of the land, so not everyone was able to have their house saved. It's a horrible tragedy, absolutely terrifying thing. So, of course, a conspiracy theories are going to come out about it. So she was arrested. She was actually in a limo a couple months before this with her limo driver, and she was dragged out of the limo, and they shot her limo driver, and she had a hand-signed letter from Barack Obama saying, "You can't arrest me." Signed Barack Obama, "Please don't arrest Oprah, my friend." And they said, these letters don't mean anything. He's not even the real president anyways. And they arrested her. And they brought her to Guantanamo Bay. Now that article, I'll put that in show notes too. That article was basically saying how many secret agents, because this was like a downtown LA thing, these white hats, these military troops that are still loyal to President Trump. They took so many agents to pull her out of the car because she was so obese. That whole article was about how, basically it was a math problem. If a woman is 400 pounds, or however much they implied she was in the article, she's not that heavy. She really isn't. Even at her heaviest, she wasn't like the worst. Anyways, it was talking about basically how the shocks in the limo had to be fortified so it would take her anywhere, and how many agents it took to hold her down and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be honest, it was amusing to read. A bunch of fat jokes, a bunch of dead limo driver jokes. This is the end. She's a television icon. So, according to Real Raw News, since she's in Guantanamo Bay and she's going to be executed for knowing about the Maui fires and not helping anybody, I don't know what they expect her to do, put on a fireman suit, right? They say she's too fat to move, but apparently she's supposed to be able to run up and down 10 flights of stairs and rescuing people. Her last meal. She's in Guantanamo Bay. It's her last meal. They're like, so, Oprah, what would you like to eat on your last day? We already gave you a bigger cell. This cell was made for 10 men, and you're still having a hard time fitting into it, man. According to Real Raw News, her last meal was a dozen scrambled eggs. This is going to make you hungry. Honestly, I was like, oh, I could do that in just a dozen? I could totally do that. I used to eat 4 dozen eggs a day. A dozen scrambled eggs, 20 links of sausage, and 12 slices of buttered toast. It was described as, quote, a gluttonous woman's last repast, unquote. Or a really nice way to start a Saturday morning. The 20 links of sausage might be a little much, but I remember when I was on keto, they had pre-cooked sausage at Walmart, like a box of it. And I was like, I guess this is lunch. I guess I want to eat a box of microwave sausage. People are like, they're going to be like, Jason, I know you're on keto. And it did work. It worked really well for me. But they're like, when they say eat meat, they're talking about like meat from an animal you can identify that's not pre-cooked. That doesn't come in a box that's so greasy. It's like, oh, I better hurry up and get this home before all the sausage links falls out. And I don't know if there was 20 in that box, but it was definitely close. It's probably like 18 or 16. Dude, 12 slices of buttered toast? Put some jelly on that. And I'm down. I'm totally down. I remember once, I used to eat a lot of waffles. And when I'd say a lot of waffles, I'd have 2. Right? You have a toaster, it has 2 slices in it. Put my 2 waffles in it. Make me some waffles for breakfast. Well, one day, My brother was visiting. This was years and years ago. My brother came over, and he's like, I'm going to make some waffles, because I always had a box of Eggo waffles. Yeah. And he put 2 waffles into the toaster, and the 2 waffles popped out, and then he put 2 more waffles into the now empty toaster. And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, dude, you know, you can use the toaster twice in a row. You can eat 4 waffles. And I don't know why I never considered that. From then on, this might be why I end up going on keto later in life. It's like, why am I so overweight? This is huge. As I'm eating 4 waffles. Yeah, it blew my mind. Anyways, she ends up eating a dozen scrambled eggs, 20 links of sausage, 12 slices of buttered toast. Now the guards show up, and it's time to take her to the, what do they call it? Like the hangman's noose, the scaffolding, or the, whatever that's called. Probably could have looked it up. But anyways, the 2 guards show up, and she doesn't want to go. She's holding on to her bunk. She's not ready to die. I think it'd be hard for anybody. They pull out the zip ties. The military police pull out their zip ties, which we are told it was because, quote, her wrists were too bloated for handcuffs. She's dying. She's about to be executed. Guys, do you really have to keep making fat jokes? Her hands are so fat, handcuffs won't work on her. So they had to zip tie her down. And she keeps saying, call Obama, he'll explain everything, he'll tell you all about the evil plots that not that part, he'll tell us all about the good stuff, and how I'm innocent. And they're like, we're not going to call Obama. Plus, honestly, to be honest, he's probably dead in this continuity, in this universe, however they have it laid out. He's probably a hologram or a clone or whatever. Quote, they struggled to stuff her into the rear seat of their Hummer, which is a military vehicle made to transport troops through the desert. You can fit a lot of people and a lot of gear, but apparently, she's not that fat. She can fit in a normal human car seat. She's not so fat she can't fit in the back seat of a Hummer, which is one of the biggest cars on the road. But anyways, quote, they struggled to stuff her into the rear seat of their Hummer. Winfrey weighed 345 pounds at a pre-execution physical, unquote. That's not that fat. Listen, okay, it is. It's unhealthy. Like, Jason, no, Jason, that's really fat. Here's the thing, okay. 345 pounds is really fat. It is not, cannot fit in the back of a military vehicle fat. 345 pounds, she might have a hard time getting in to the Hummer. Plus, you know, she did just eat all those sausages and she's about to die. I feel real bad for the coroner who has to deal with this body, but she can fit in the back of a Hummer. She can sit in the back of a wide military vehicle. Quote, the hangman placed the loop of rope around Winfrey's neck and a cloth sack over her head. The admiral gave the order that prompted the hangman to flip the switch that triggered the pivoting door beneath Winfrey's paunchy legs. Why do you add that part? I mean, it's already so somber. Theater of the mind, you can totally picture it. And then, I forgot who writes all these articles. It's a single dude. I'm going to pull his name up real quick, but it's so bizarre. Like, why? First off, I had to look up the definition of paunchy. I had not heard that word before, but here's the thing. I had to look up the definition, but I go, I'm pretty sure it means fat. I was like, whatever it is, it's going to be something involving fat or overweight or Michael Baxter. Michael Baxter is the guy who writes all of these articles, and he has already been threatened with lawsuits. He kept saying stuff about Bill Gates being like a pedophile or the Antichrist or both or something like that. So paunchy means having a pot belly. I mean, you got to give a woman a little bit of dignity. She's swaying there. I'm surprised he didn't say that. She was so heavy, the whole hangman's noose collapsed upon itself like a dying star. They've never seen her or the hangman since. No, she just kind of hangs there for 3 minutes and then dies. I'm surprised they didn't have a fat joke at the very end. They had to use like the type of metal cables they use on the front of Ford F-150 trucks to like haul trees. No, it's just a normal rope. I guess Michael Baxter had a heart in the end after all. He decided he was just going to insult her legs one last time. This stuff is so crazy. I love Real Raw News. I actually don't cover it a lot because otherwise I would be all that I cover. Right? There's always so much craziness. I have to kind of wait until it gets super crazy like this. And another reason I'm covering it is Cantillions, a long time ago, came up with an idea for a theme week, which I never did. He said, dude, we should do like a historical espionage week. He goes like funny or wacky, totally out there spy stories type of thing. So this is what you get, Cantillions. You get Oprah Winfrey at Guantanamo Bay, which I think he would have enjoyed, right? Right now, Oprah Winfrey's lawyers are the ones who don't enjoy this episode, this segment, but I thought it'd be a fun one to start off with. Cantillions, let's go ahead and toss you the oars to the Dead Rabbit rowboat. Everyone climb on board. As he rows us out of Guantanamo Bay, why don't you take us all the way out to Indonesia? Sploosh! Oh, sploosh! It's a nice leisurely 3-month row from Guantanamo Bay to Indonesia. We're headed all the way out to Indonesia. Specifically, we're headed out to Sumatra, Indonesia. Even more specific than that, there's the Gunung Loser. Probably not how you pronounce that. This is where all the nerdy animals hang out. They're like, oh, you're not cool enough to be in a zoo, buddy. In the Gunung Loser National Park. And within there, there's the Sok Balim Research Area. So this is where scientists go and they'll be like hiding in the bushes. And they got binoculars and a little hat like explorers used to wear. And they're hiding in the bushes. And they're looking and they see like a parrot fly by. And they're like, Charlie, look, there's that parrot we've been talking about. Parrot Magnificus. He has 2 wings. This is his first day on the job. They're like, what? Why are you out here? You don't even know what a parrot is? He's like, oh no, I just discovered a new species. I'll call it a parrot. Taking notes. These researchers have been out here for decades. And it's kind of cool because the animals can kind of come and go from the research area. So they get to live their own life, but if they're in the research area, they're under constant surveillance. So it's like a living experiment. We're going to go back to summer 2022. These researchers are sitting there and they hear an researchers are like, we know what that noise is. That's the sound of orangutans beating each other up. It sounds pretty violent, too. Well, I guess one won that fight because the other one's running away. They hear like this brutal brawl up in the treetops. They can't really see what's going on there. About a day later, in the same area, the researchers see this orangutan that they've named Rackus. His dope-ass name, right? For a monkey or man, Rackus. He's around 30 years old. I didn't even know orangutans live that long. You're like, Jason, you barely know how to pronounce orangutan. I'm sure I'm not getting it right, but what was I talking about recently on an episode? I did the whole episode. Oh, ventriloquist. And I just got emails and YouTube comments. They're like, what? That's not how you pronounce it. Ventriloquist. Anyways, orangutan. So Rackus, they see him walking through the jungle and they see that right under his right eye, he's missing a piece of flesh. It's just this raw pink wound. They said it was about the size of a puzzle piece. Missing there. And he's all, and it hurts, right? I mean, he has this chunk of his face missing. And then they see him walking along and he's going, and they're close. I don't know how close these people get to these monkeys or if they just have really good binoculars. But as Rackus is yelling about something or another, whatever orangutans get mad at, they see he has an open wound inside his mouth as well. So they go, oh, Rackus must have been part of that brawl. And he got cut up. Imagine getting in a fight and you walk away from it with a with a wound inside your mouth. You're like, what? Oh, I got a black eye, and my left shoulder's kind of sore, but I'm really, really concerned about the constant bleeding from the top of the inside of my mouth. They're like, what? Has a sore on the roof of his mouth, and he has this open wound on his face, and they see Rackus walking around, and they're like, dude, poor guy. But, he's 30 years old, give or take. He'll get over it. But then they see him picking the leaves of this plant called the liana plant. And orangutans don't eat these. Orangutans don't eat these leaves, but they see old Rackus sitting there. He sits down on his monkey butt, and he's sitting underneath the tree, and he goes, nom, nom, nom. But he's not eating it. He's putting it in his mouth. He's just chewing it over and over and over again. And they're like, this is weird, because we've never really observed orangutans eating this type of leaf. Or he's not even eating it, he's just chewing it. And then one time, because they're observing him, they're definitely wondering what's up. Did he get his brain rattled? Did he forget what food is? He's all, yummy, a rock? It's not normal food for an orangutan, but humans will use these for pain relief. These leaves, they will use to treat wounds. So the scientists are like, well, he must be chewing on it to relieve the soreness in his mouth. It's like a pain reliever. And they're like, that's super bizarre. Animals have been noted to do this in the past, but it's incredibly rare, and it's almost always primates. But they're watching him eat these leaves, chew on these leaves, and they go, that's crazy. But then later on after that, they watch Rackus, and he's sitting there and he's chewing on these leaves. And then he pulls the leaves out, and they're all chewed up, and he begins to make a paste with them. And he's making this paste, and he begins to rub the paste on the open wound on his face. Paste on the face. And the scientists, I imagine, this was incredible, but I imagine they both looked at each other and they're like, that's new. We've never seen that before. Apparently, this is the very first time people, humans, or researchers at least, I'm sure someone might have seen this in like the 700s and didn't know how to write stuff down, but nowadays, this is the first time that a scientist has ever seen an animal create a salve, or really even treat a open wound on their exterior. Basically use medicine. This is the first time they've ever seen an animal use medicine to treat a wound on the exterior of their body. Which seems super specific, right? Then the question is, well, then do they use it again? Apparently chimps, they have seen chimps eat this type of daisy that's real bitter to them. This was in another area. This wasn't in this reserve, but they've seen monkeys, chimps. There are these really bitter daisies, and they see them eating them. And they're like, why are they eating them? Those are super gross. The researcher's like, listen, man, I've had my fair share of daisies in my life. Those are the grossest ones. And so they started to observe that, and what they figured out was they would see a monkey that started acting weird. Started acting like it was sick. It was like laying there, it was rubbing its tummy, and the other monkeys are like, woo-hoo-hee-hee, and he's like, he'd be rubbing his tummy, and then that would be the guy who, like, a day or two later would start eating the daisies. And they saw that happen a few times, and when a monkey acted like it was sick, it would eventually go and eat these daisies. Well, it turns out that these daisies can be used to fight off parasites in the body. And they go, that's probably what's happening. These monkeys are having tummy aches, and they're eating the leaves, and it's basically a medicine. In 2008 in Borneo, they've seen orangutans use chewed leaves, but it wasn't to treat an open wound. They saw these orangutans, they're like chewing on all these leaves, and then they're making this paste, and they're rubbing each other. They're rubbing each other's bodies. They're like, that's it. I'm done researching animals. This is getting really weird. You're watching these two orangutans cover themselves in this paste. Now, obviously, we can't ask, hey, dude, why are you doing that? But what they realize is that the indigenous population of the area uses that same plant as a paste to treat body aches, like joint pain and stuff like that. So basically, they invented Bengay. They didn't invent it, but it's a monkey version. It's the first one on the monkey market. This is the first time in 2022 where we've seen an orangutan have a wound and then create this salve to treat the wound. And they have. Rackus is totally fine. The sore in his mouth is gone. The facial wound healed up. He's doing just fine. You're all like, oh, I hope Rackus is okay. You're like, oh, I'm so worried. I hope he's okay. He's fine. It's interesting because they said, we don't know what causes this. They go, it's two possible things, or it could be a million things, but two scenarios. One is something called individual innovation. And they go, it's possible that at some point, because Rackus and those other orangutans, they're separated by, hundreds, if not thousands of miles, and they definitely didn't know the chimps. This is all happening separately, but they go, it's possible that Rackus at some point had a cut on his finger, and he ended up touching that liana plant, the leaf of that liana plant, and it made the pain in his finger lessen or go away. They go, it's possible that this is how animals can pick up some of this stuff. They stumble across it, and they go, wow, that actually helped, and they remember it. Or the other one is that it was taught to him by other orangutans, that even though this is the first time we observed it, other people in his group, tribe, whatever you call it, a gaggle of orangutans, a serious problem if there's more than two. It's a problem of orangutans. It's possible that this is going on in his group, that he was taught this. They said orangutans apparently have 400 different types of food to eat, and their mom teaches them what to eat, and they have to remember all of it. Which sounds ridiculous. I think you can narrow it down to 10 guys. They're like, oh, I really want to eat that pear, but I don't know how. I'm starving to death. I don't even think a human eats 400 different types of food. Maybe I read it wrong. You're fact-checking this whole thing. You're like, I don't know. First off, I don't know if that's how you pronounce orangutan, Jason. They have to memorize all this food, and it has such a high social structure, their parents will be like, here is a pear. Take a bite, son. Oh, that's so good. Here's a pile of thistle. It's all hurting Dad's hand. He's like, ow, son, eat. And he goes, Dad, you just learned a lesson, Rackus. The jungle is no place. Trust your father. He's like, now let's go to the waterfalls. I'll teach you how to swim. He's like, Anyways. So the point is that we have this monkey that puts on facial medicine. It's the first time we've ever seen it. Is it something that he's doing on his own? Because we've only seen him do it. Is it something that's being taught? Fascinating stuff. We'll see. Cantillions seem to have a thing for monkeys. He was constantly talking about monkeys. He sent me a story to cover about a monkey, which we'll cover in a future episode. He apparently had a thing for simians, which who wouldn't, right? They're pretty cool. So again, Cantillions, that one's for you. You got your spy adventure. Oprah Winfrey's like, this is not what I meant. We got your fascination with apes, and now we're headed off. One last time, Cantillions, I'm going to toss you the keys to the world famous Carpenter copter. We are leaving behind. Where were we? We are leaving behind Indonesia. Fly us all the way out to Florida. I got to give a shout out to the last 747. He sent this over to me. Fantastic find. I love stories like this. We're headed to Florida. Specifically, we're headed to South Florida. That's about as specific as it gets, though. We're going to go to rehab. And we're going to meet a guy. We don't have his real name. We'll call him Frank. This takes place a couple years ago. And Frank is sitting in this rehab center. And he said the way that it was laid out, he goes, it was actually kind of cool. It was like a fancy hotel. But it was people who were trying to kick drug addictions. So, you kind of lose a little bit of the kick back and relax type of thing. You're constantly going to classes. I've never gone to rehab, but I imagine it's a lot of classes, a lot of talking, a lot of sex. I know a lot of people are banging during the time at rehab. That probably explains this next part. It was separated. So on one side of the street, you had like this building that was the male rehab center, and then right across the street was pretty much the same building that was a women's rehab center. And Frank goes, I had issues with drugs. We don't know exactly which one. Doesn't particularly matter, I don't think, because at this point he's 5 months clean. Like, this is a long-term treatment. I believe he was at another treatment center first, and now they moved him here. And he did 5 months here, and he goes, this was the last few weeks of my 5-month stint at this rehab center. And he goes, in those 5 months, it was like a revolving door of drug addicts. You'd see people come in and leave. Right? Walk in, they're like, oh, it's a really nice place, but I really do love my drugs. I left something in my car, guys. I'm going to go back, drive away. He goes, people would come in and out. People would join the program. People would graduate from the program. People would fail out of the program. All of that stuff. And he goes, some of them were far worse off than others. He goes, you'd get people in there who have really bad drug addiction, sure. But on top of that, you'd have people with severe depression, bipolar disorder, massive panic attack issues, so because a lot of times people are self-medicating to cover all of that stuff up. He goes, you'd get just regular drug addicts in there, and then you'd get people who had serious mental health problems. I also want to take this time to say this story has nothing to do with Cantillions. I plan on doing this story today, last week. You're like, what's Cantillions? A drug abusing mental case? No. This was just, I thought, a really cool story that I'd planned to do anyways. But so Frank sees these people come and go, and it's just you're going to make friendships. You're going to bond with some people, other people you don't really get along with, and all sorts of things. You wish everyone the best, because at the end of the day, you guys are all coming from that same situation, but you may not get along with everybody, because it's random people coming in and out. One day, this guy comes in, this new guy, named Mike. And Frank said that Mike was about 30 to 40 years old. He wasn't for sure. And Frank said that they were told by the staff, he goes, they didn't tell us exactly what his condition was, obviously because of HIPAA laws, but they said, hey, so we're getting this new guy in, Mike. He has, you might hear him talking to himself really loudly. You might hear him freaking out. enjoy your new neighbor. They're just giving him a heads up. If you see him talking to himself in the corner, screaming, just, if it gets bad, let us know. But other than that, we're just going to put him in your wing. He ends up being part of Frank's wing. So apparently it's like this living space. And again, it's kind of laid out like a hotel. He said it was actually really nice layout. He goes, there, you would have these particular wings where it'd be like a couple guys in this area, and then they'd have their sleeping areas. And I think they all got their own sleeping area, but it could have also been kind of a bunk, like 2 to 3 guys per room. Anyways, Frank sees Mike come in. Frank knows the deal that Mike's dealing with some heavy stuff. So Frank decides, I'm going to kind of just take the first step. I'm going to introduce myself to Mike. I've been here for almost 5 months. I'm almost leaving the program. I just want to reach out to him. So he does. He goes, I met Mike, and I was like, hey, buddy, so my name's Frank. It's nice to meet you. I've been here for a while. If you got any questions, just let me know. You're actually going to be in the same wing, the same unit we're in. So we'll be spending some time together. And it's not like I'm going to be up in your business, but if you need any help, just let me know. That's what I'm here to do. And Mike's like, oh, cool, man. That's totally awesome. Later that night, Frank is sitting in the living room part of this unit. So the other people are in their rooms. And Frank is sitting there watching television, and he hears Mike. He hears Mike yelling from his room. Don't say that! No! I'm not doing that! Just leave me alone! I said get out of here! And Frank goes, it was weird. We knew what was coming, right? We knew that he was going to be yelling to himself, that he was talking to somebody who wasn't there. Frank thinks that he was schizophrenic. He goes, we knew that was coming. He goes, it was interesting that there would be a pause, right? He would say something and then he goes, it was almost as if he was listening to a reply. Someone else was saying something. And then Mike's like, no, I'm not doing that. What do you mean I have to? Ah. So anyway, I'm not trying to laugh at this guy's suffering, but anyways, it is weird. It is weird for Frank to be sitting there. He's like, and now for a calming movie, he's watching some movies, watching like Sinister. He's like, oh yeah, this will put me at ease. As a man is screaming down the hallway. A couple days later, Frank wakes up. This goes on for a while, right? Mike's yelling, talking to somebody else. You just have to get used to it. It's background noise at a certain point. Well, Frank one morning wakes up and he goes into the little kitchen area and he's making coffee when all of a sudden he hears, what are you doing? And it was Mike. Mike had walked up behind him and was standing in the kitchen with him and asked Frank, what are you doing? And Frank turns, kind of an awkward making coffee. If this is your first time as an adult. Frank turns around. Mike's not there. In fact, he actually hears Mike in his room scream out, ah, get out of here. He's like, what? How could he have done that? How could he have run all the way down this hallway and yelled in his room? Here's the thing, it's possible. It's not like he's bending the laws of space and time. You can run down a hallway. But it's weird. Frank's like, put a little wrinkle in his brain. He goes, I'm going to remember that. That is weird. About a week later, Frank is watching television in the living area. Mike starts talking to himself again. No, never, I'm not going to do that. Why do you keep bugging me? Oh, come on, man, just leave me alone. And Frank's turning up the volume of the television set. He's like, oh man, I never saw this episode of 2.5 Men. I'm just going to ignore Mike. This goes on for a while, and Frank's sitting out in the living area, and he hears Mike talk to himself. And then Frank's really kind of straining his ears, and he starts to turn the television down because he's hearing something. Something he hadn't heard before. I told you no. I'm not going to do that. Leave me alone, please. Just go and do what I told you to. It's for the best. No, that's bad. I won't do it. Go to the kitchen and get the knife. Now. Frank is clearly hearing two voices in the room. He hears Mike's voice, and then he hears the voice of another man. And he's sitting there in the living room, and he's thinking, what in the world is going on? He goes, I know that it's possible that he's nuts, right? And he's doing two different voices, but this is weird. He has not done this before. And Frank gets up out of his chair and begins to walk down that hallway towards Mike's bedroom. And as he's getting closer, this feeling of dread just drips down over him. He's walking down this hallway, and he hears Mike, and he hears this other voice, and they're having an argument. He said an argument. If this guy was doing both voices, it wasn't just that they sounded differently. He goes, it sounded like two totally different people. He said they sounded like they were coming from different parts of the room. He's getting so close now that he can hear where Mike would be in the room. And the voice seems to be standing somewhere else. He's hearing the voices in two different locations. And he goes, and they're interrupting each other. They're cutting each other off. They're talking over each other. But all of that, whether or not Mike is doing both of the voices and able to interrupt himself and make it sound like he's in different areas of the room. Or Mike is talking to some sort of paranormal being from beyond that no one else can see. Frank has a long-term problem and a short-term problem. Long-term problem is finding out what's wrong with Mike. The short-term problem is whether he's crazy or he's talking to a ghost or a demon or whatever, he's talking about getting a knife. Frank knocks on the door, and immediately the talking stops. Both voices. Frank pushes the door open and sees Mike sitting there, holding his hand in his head like he had just gotten some bad news. I'm okay. Yeah, just, shut the door. I just need to be left alone. And so Frank does. That's exactly what he does. He does the smart thing. He leaves his buddy alone, goes, finds the head nurse, and he says, hey, dude, you gotta do something. This guy's talking about getting a knife. I'm actually afraid of what could happen. And what's really interesting is that he said that I heard Mike talking about grabbing a knife, and I don't feel safe. He didn't say anything about, dude, this guy might actually not be insane. This might actually be some sort of paranormal force. He didn't bring up demons. He didn't bring up anything. Like, I heard two voices. Are you sure he's in the right place? Are you sure he shouldn't be in some military laboratory or the Vatican? They might be able to figure out what's going on with this guy. No. And they did. He said that they ended up moving Mike to a place where they could treat him better. And I don't know if that means it's a different wing of the hospital or they moved him to another facility. And Frank really isn't sure either. Frank posted this online underneath the name Fricka Fresh. And he goes, I still really don't know how to place this story as far as, was it paranormal? And let me read how you ended this. He said, quote, to this day, I think about this experience I had with Mike and try to find some reasonable explanations for what happened and what I heard. I never heard voices or had hallucinations. I've been clean off drugs for years. This was just an experience I had that made me question reality. I feel like he didn't have schizophrenia, but was possessed. I think about it often and still can't come to terms with it. I guess I want closure about it, and it's just something I'll never get. Unquote. And that's really what we're looking at here. Really, we have, much like the orangutan story, I say we have two choices, but we have a whole host of choices. One of them is that Mike is insane. And he's experiencing things that aren't there because they're not there. He's hallucinating. He's hearing these voices. He's having these dark thoughts. And he's trying to battle with his own psyche their inner demons. Which is tragic enough. Really, really is tragic enough. That's one case. The other scenario is they're not inner demons, they're outer demons. There actually is some sort of horrific paranormal force that has latched on to Mike. And before that happened, he might have not been insane. He might have been a totally normal dude. May have been a drug addict, right? He could have been messing around with drugs and something latched onto him. He could have been not a drug addict. He could have been a square. And then this happened. And here's the thing. Who's going to believe you? Who's going to believe you if you start telling people you see a demon and he's telling you to do horrible stuff? But don't worry, I'm not going to grab the knife. But this demon keeps telling me to get a knife, but I'm fighting it. I'm fighting that demon. The demon right over there. And you turn around, you're all scared. You're like, oh, what? What? It's over there. You turn around. There's nothing there. You're going to go, because just to be safe, you're going to talk to medical professionals first. If someone's saying that they're having dark thoughts or they think something's haunting them or something's around them and you have time, like we talk about this a lot on the show, with paranormal stuff, you don't know if it's mental illness or paranormal sometimes. And I go, if it's a slow ramp up, you have time to try out your alternatives. You know, like, let's find a faith leader. Are you particularly religious? Oh, you're a Presbyterian? Let's go to that church. Let's go over there and talk to the guy in charge. But if he's talking about getting knives, if he's like, the voices are telling me to kill you, to kill everyone, especially Presbyterian ministers, you're like, oh, maybe we'll jump to the end. Maybe we'll go straight to the last page of this book and have it treated medically, because you're more worried. If someone's like, yeah, I feel like there's something latched onto me, I feel really down, and sometimes I see something at the foot of my bed. It's non-knife related. It's not a giant knife saying, grab me right now. You can be like, okay, we can approach this slowly. But if you think they're a danger to themselves or others, you don't want to be like, well, let me check out some resources online. Maybe I can do an exorcism. Maybe I can help you out, bro. The mental illness part is terrifying. That it's all just mental illness. And it would explain the talking to the self. It would explain the dark thoughts. But when you have Frank hearing the two voices in the room, you go, maybe he's just really good. Maybe he's a good ventriloquist. He can throw his voice across the room. Maybe. But then that part where Frank was in the kitchen making coffee and he heard Mike right behind him saying, what are you doing? And he turned around and there was no one along that hallway. Mike wasn't there. And then right when he turns around, he hears Mike yelling in the room. That's now, you could go, well, maybe Mike is Usain Bolt. Maybe that's a fake name. He's really Usain Bolt. Yeah, maybe. You can be skeptical about anything. It does seem there's some paranormal elements. The thing is that if it's a mental illness, if it's strictly a mental illness, that's, I don't want to say what I'm about to say, but in a way that is easier for us to deal with than to think it is a demon. Because here's the thing, I'm 47 years old. I'm really outside of the possibility of getting schizophrenia. I knew growing up, my biggest fear was losing my mind, was going insane. Pretty much, I do a daily paranormal podcast. I'm talking about leprechauns and ghouls and stuff like that. People may say I am insane, but I'm not so worried about having a hardcore mental illness breakdown. Outside of me having some sort of horrific head wound, or, if I go, you know what, I'm tired of not smoking the ganja. I'm going back, bros. I'm going back like I'm 21 years old again, and I grab a dab pen for 95% potency, and I start, puffing on it, and my brain just fries. That could give me a mental illness. We're seeing that in the reports. We're seeing a lot of young people. I'm not young, but you know what I mean? Basically just saying, like, the chances of me becoming mentally ill are very, very low. And it's probably the same for most of us. Unless right now you're 21 years old, you're hitting the depth, and you're like, wait, what did he say? What did he say? Am I going to go insane? Is this high ever going to end? That's one thing. The other thing is this demon, this supernatural force that could come into any of our lives and completely ruin them. That's scary. That's terrifying. Being mentally ill, having this hardcore breakdown to the point where you have to be medically treated, that's terrifying as well. But I think I've crossed that Rubicon. I think I'm okay with that. Something latching onto me and I'm like looking at it. I can clearly see it and no one else can. And when they hear me go, the forces, the dark evil around me is trying to make me grab the knife, but I won't grab the knife. All they hear is me saying the word knife over and over again. And they'll be concerned. They'll be scared. And they'll have me taken to a medical facility. They'll have me taken to a mental asylum. Everyone's at risk of this type of thing. If it's truly paranormal, it can find its way, it can weasel its way into your life, and then you're just like Mike. You're sitting there trying to live your life, but you can't because this evil has surrounded you. And even though you're not doing the evil things, you are treated like you are the evil thing. And people think you're crazy, but you're not. You see what others cannot see, but they treat you like crazy. They can't cure you. They can only contain you. But they cannot contain the paranormal darkness that has ruined your life. After all is said and done, it will find another victim as you rot away in an insane asylum. So there you go, Cantillions. There you go. That is our memorial episode to you. I think this is only the second memorial episode. We did one for Samson the dog. I don't remember the name of the listener, but I definitely remember the name of your dog, Samson. We did an episode for him. This dog would listen to Dead Rabbit Radio, and now we're doing one for Cantillions. And I hope we don't do any more. I hope everybody lives forever. It was quite a bummer to find out that, Cantillions passed away, and he's pretty young. He was in his 30s, from what I understand. But so to Cantillions and Samson and all members of the Fluffle, either alive or dead, we toast to you. Hopefully, that was kind of a downer ending, right? You're like, I don't know, man. I'm still thinking about people being locked in insane asylums. And you're like, let's talk about a dead dog. And listeners passed on. Well, probably could have planned it out a little bit better, but what would Dead Rabbit Radio be if everything was perfect? DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. TikTok is @DeadRabbitRadio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, and I'm glad you listened to it today. Have a great one, guys.
Where the forest meets the water, where the air is crisp and clear, I sit afloat all of these wonders, caress the textures of our years, and I'm loving every moment of this, whatever it is we are. I wanna love you like the moon loves the stars. When all our origami constructs have all the creases iron flat, all our hopes, our dreams, our inspirations, our motivations are left to wither at our backs. Well, I'm loving every moment of this, whatever it is we are. I wanna love you like the moon loves the stars. I'm gonna love you like the moon loves the stars. At the foot of the holy mountain, there's an ever-flowing stream. The mystic mandate reads, just wash yourself and cleanse yourself. Wash in this river and And I'm loving every moment of this, whatever it is we are. I wanna love you like the moon loves the stars. I'm gonna love you like the moon loves the stars. And we are, whatever it is we are. And we are. Where the forest meets the water, where the air is crisp and clear, I sit afloat all of these wonders, caress the textures of our years.